Good afternoon. Myself Karthikeyan, Assistant Professor, Department of CSE, Government College of Engineering, Sengipati, Tanjavur. Today, I am going to discuss the concept of constructors in Java. Before we are going to discuss about the constructor concepts, first of all, we must to know why we need to go for a constructor. Okay, let us take a simple example. So in that, just to take a simple, we know that data members. So the class consists of different properties, consists of data members and as well as a member function. So in that, so we know that assume that here I am just defining only the data members of a class. So here I am going to define the class as a rectangle. It is a class name is called as a rectangle. So here I am going to define the two properties. One is called as length, another one is called as a breadth. Okay, so for this cases, here I am assume that the length property is a 10 and the property value of a breadth is a 20. So if I'm going to create any number of objects for the class rectangle, for example, I'm interested to create an object for rectangle R1 and R2. So the value of this R1 and R2 is always the same. It means that the properties of all the classes are same, but in real situation, it is not possible. I think you understood that. So if you are assigning the values at the time of declaration and for the instance variable in a Java, so it is not the best way to assign the value. It is not the best choices to assign the value of this value of a data member that is an instance variable at the time of declarations. So because this the properties, the data members, the instant variables is always to define it and define the common properties which is common for all. That means that this property is common for all the object. The property is common, but the value inside of the property is maybe different. So if you are assigning the value to the variable at the time of declaration for the instance variable, it means that all the objects are having a similar values for a similar properties. So in real time, it is not possible. So that we are using the concept of constructors. We are going to assign the value for value. Means we are going to assign the value for the instance variable. So so for assigning a value for instance variable, we can achieve through the concept of constructors. So now come to the definition of the constructor. Constructor is a special member function which is used for initialization of data members. So generally we can say that the constructors for allocation of memory. So like that also somebody can allocation of memory. So many of them is saying that the constructors for allocation of a memory. It is not like that constructors for assigning a value for the data member, not for allocation of a memory. And it means that the constructor functions can invoke automatically at the time of object creation, so that many of them feel that it is for allocation of a memory. So it is not like that, it's for initialization of data member. So first of all, we must know what is constructor. So in this constructor function, the name of your class name, means that the class name and function name must be same. This is one first important property. Second one, so it is like as a function. It is to assign a value to the data members. Assign to the value for instance variable. That means the data members of a class. And third one is it invokes automatically. It invokes automatically at the time of object creation. Object creation itself. So, and the fourth one, the constructor method does not have a return type. So, not having any return type. So, these are the important properties of a constructor method. I can repeat once again. Means that means that in the constructor, the name of the class name and function name should be same. And the character method means normally used to assign the value for the data member, so that the method means that the logic of the constructors should not contain any operation. But even if you are defining any operation inside of the constructor method, it will not say any means it will not reflect anything. It will not create any error messages and all. We can able to define it, but according to the definition of the constructor, it is not a correct way to define the operation inside of the constructor method. and there is no need to invoke the constructor method by the help of dot operator. It will be invoked automatically when the object is created. And the constructor method is not having any return type. So first of all, we must know how to define the constructor. So syntax for creating a constructor. So syntax for creating a constructor. Access modifier. Here access modifier is optional. So that is represented within square bracket. So then after that, you are going to say the name of the function, that is called class name. I told that the class name and the function name is same. Class name, then if there is any argument, you can specify it. But here the argument is optional. So it is optional. So I'm going to represent within square bracket. Then we are going to write the logic of the constructor. That is an assignment statement assigning value for the data member. So logic of constructor method. So once again I repeat the definition of a constructor. Constructor is a special member function which is used to assign the value for the data member. So it will not contain any return type. That means the constructor method is not having any return type. And the function name and class name must be same, and it will be invoked automatically at the time of object creation itself. Okay, let us take a simple example to define the purpose of constructor. Assume that I'm going to create a constructors class for creating a for rectangle. So here I prefer to use only for calculation of the area of the rectangle. Okay, so here I am going to define the three properties. One is a length, another one is a breadth property, and I need another one more memory location for storing the results of a variable. So here these are the three instance variable we have. Even if we want, we can define an area in a single line itself. That is not a problem. Even if you want, we can declare it as separate choices. We know that we can able to assign like this for a value for any property, but if you are assigning the value like that, it is not a correct way to define it, because if you are assigning a value in that, it means that all the property all the length property for any rectangle object have a similar value, but in real situation it is not possible. So that assigning a value at the time of declaring an instance variable is not a correct choice. So then we are going to initialize, we are going to define a constructors. I told that according to the properties of a constructor, the class name and function name is same. So here the function name is called as a rectangle. So then we are going to define the field. So here there are three types of a constructors we have. One is called parameterized, one is a default constructor, second one is a parameterized and a copy constructor. Here I am going to assign some default value for a properties. Assume that I am going to assign a value for length equal to length is 10 and the breadth equal to 25. So like that I am interested to assign. So here this is a constructor method. Here my class name is a rectangle. So here it is also the name is a rectangle, but the rectangle name class name followed by open parenthesis. So we know that the name followed by the word followed by the open parenthesis always to call it as a function. So that this is a special member function. So this is a member function for initialization of the data member. Initialization of the data member. So that so here the values of data members are initialized. So here the inputs are length and breadth. So these values are initialized. So here we are assigning for all the objects the length property and breadth properties are same. So this is called a default constructor. This is a special member function. This is a default constructor. So the constructor method will be invoked automatically at the time of object creation itself. So I can repeat once again. So this constructor function is not necessary to invoke with the help of dot operator with the help of objects. So normally constructors will be invoked at the time of object creation itself. So automatically it invokes the constructor method. So here not necessary to use a constructor dot operator. Okay, I can showcase it. If for easy understanding, just actually this is not a best way to do that, but for easy understanding purpose, I'm going to define a one print statement inside of to understand the concept of constructor invoking principle. Invoked at the time of object creation. I don't have any method calling in a construct in the function definition, sorry, in my main function definition, but I have I'm going to compile my code and sorry, there is a spelling mistake. Breath. So now, there is no error. So automatically, the class will be created under the name is D. So see that the constructor is invoked at the time of object creation. Even see the main function definition. So in the main function definition, we don't have a means we have only object creation itself. Only we have object creations. Other than that, we don't have any statement here. But automatically, the functions will be created. Means the function will be invoked. So here I am assigning us some default value for this, so that we call as a default constructor. In some cases, we are going to assign some default value for that. In this situation, we can go with default constructor. So here, once again, I can repeat it. I mean, I can recall the concepts. If the class name, here the class name and the function names are same, but only the differentiated by this symbol, so that if there is any given program is given, if you want to understand the member function and the special member constructor, the class name and function name same, and the class name followed with a function symbol, then we will refer as a constructor. So that this is the call of constructors. I mean, so this is the definition of a constructor. So normally this a constructor will be used to assign a value for initialize the value for the parameters. In some cases, we are saying for allocation of a memory, but it is not a best choice. We know that whenever the object is created, the memory is allocated automatically. So that we are saying that and at the time given constructor method is also invoked at the time of creating an object. So that many of them is saying that the constructor for allocation of a memory. It is not a correct statement. So constructor for allocation of means a constructor for initialization of the data member. But the thing is, you should not, according to the definition of the constructor, we should not define any logical part of the program inside of the constructor. So that even if you are using system.out.println is a print method, calling of print method inside of the constructor is also not a best choice to do that. So I hope that you have a understanding of what's a understanding of a constructor method. Okay, for easy understanding, I'm saying that concepts means I'm defining that defining the default constructors with some printf statements. Okay, once again I want to define what are the three different type of constructors. So next one is the different types of one default constructor. Second one is parameterized constructor. And third one is a copy constructor. So one is a default constructor. So we know that it's a default constructor means that assigning a default value, assign a default values for class properties. So this is called default constructors. It means that constructor won't take any arguments. No arguments in constructor definitions. So no arguments for the constructor definition, and it is called a default value. Normally we can use to prefer to go with the default constructor, in which we are going to assign some default value for a default value for the data means instance variables of a class. Okay, so next one is called as a parameterized constructor. So here parameterized constructor is used to assign different values for the instance variables of a class. So it must have arguments. And the number of arguments in the constructor method, it depends on our applications, depends on the classes. For a copy constructor, so from that easy to say that it is a copy, so that if you want to copy the property of one object into another object, so copy the property of one object into, so copy the property of properties of one object into another, we can prefer to go with copy constructor, so that in this case we must have an argument. Argument we have, but it also must be an object. Object is passed as an argument. So these are the three possible different type of constructors we have. So once again repeat, there are three possible type of constructors we can use in our program. One is a default constructor, parameterized constructor, and third one is a copy constructor. For a default constructor, if you want to assign a common, same value for all the properties of object. For every object, we can go with the default object. So default constructor. For this case, there is no argument will be passed to the constructor method. It assigns some default value for it. So then second one is parameterized constructor. Normally parameterized constructor can be selected for assigning different values for the different properties of a different object. We can go with the parameterized constructor. But in this case, the constructor method must take an argument. And the third one is copy constructor. So if you want to copy the properties of one object into another object of a same class, we can go with the copy constructor. In this case, we have a parameter, but we can pass the object as an arguments. Okay, let us discuss all these are properties with the help of simple examples. So already we are implemented the concept of means a default constructor. So in this default constructor, we don't have any arguments. So next I am going to assign a value for concept for another one more. So here I am going to implement the concept of default constructor by assigning a different values. Instead of this, I am going to implement the parameterized constructor. So here there are two properties we need to implement it for a rectangle. One is a length, another one is a breadth. For example, I am going to say length, another one is breadth. So I'm going to copy this local variable values into objects, and this is a properties. So I'm saying it is a parameterized constructor. Instead of this, I'm going to say it is a parameterized constructor. And so just I'm going to compile my code, and I can try to implement. So now I compile, there is no errors. So I'm checking. So the constructor is work at the time of object creation, but still it works for a default constructor. So the reason is I told that according to the properties of a constructor, the constructor will be invoked at the time of object creation. So here let us check this. So the object is created on this line, but this method here the function call is not having any parameters. So if you are passing a parameter to the function, then it will be means once if you are passing any parameter, it will invoke the parameterized constructor. But here I didn't invoke any arguments here, so that I didn't pass any arguments here, so that automatically it invokes default constructor. So in case if I want to invoke a parameterized constructor, so I'm going to say new. Sorry, there is a correction here. So rectangle. I'm interested to go with parameterized constructor. So I have only one parameterized constructor, so that I can try to go with two parameters. For example, I'm interested to go with 2 and 3. Here and also same way, I'm going to create another one more object belongs to the name. So it belongs to the name. Belongs to the name is 20 and 30. So that I can use the here. So just try and compile this program. So I told that the compiler means for constructor there is no need to use a dot operator to invoke method. This is special member function, so that it will be invoked automatically at the time of object creation itself. So for my example, I have a three objects is created. So that this is that in first object for R1 that doesn't have any argument, so that it invokes a default constructor. So that the first method invokes a default constructor, and for the second line it invokes a parameterized constructor because I have two parameters. So that the two parameters matched with this parameterized constructor, so that you invoke the parameterized constructor. And for the third cases, it is also a parameterized constructor because I have again two arguments with the different values. I told that if you want to select a parameterized constructor, if you want to assign a different value for the object properties, we can go with the parameterized constructor. For R2, the length is 2 and breadth is 3. For R3 object, the length is 20 and 30. But if you want to assign the same value like for all the object R1 and R2 is you have a 10 and 25, even we can go with parameterized constructor or we can go with default constructor. So if you think that if you don't have any separate value for those property, and if you want to assign some default value those to property, we can go with the default constructor to assign its a value. So now I run a program. So I told that there are three methods will be invoked. One is there are two types of parameters a constructor will work, and one time is a default constructor. According to the order, the first one is a default constructor, the remaining two is a parameterized constructor. So the first time the default constructor will be invoked, and the next time parameterized constructor invoked, which takes the value of 2 and 3, and third time also will be third line also it will invoke a parameterized constructor because the object consists of two parameters of 20 and 30. So, from that we know that how the so from this we can say that how the values are implemented. Okay, now I am interested to calculate the area for R3. So that I'm going to calculate the area underscore CALC. I'm going to implement call the method parameters method. So just a minute, guys. So I need to do one thing. Instead of this print, I'm going to use a println so that it gives a clarity of our clarity in our output. Otherwise, we can use some escape sequences to define that. So no errors. Now I run a program. So that I'm invoked the calculation of our R3 object. For R3 object, the length is 20 and the breadth is 30. So 20 into 30 it is a 600. Yeah, even if you want, we can call it anytime in any objects, but only thing is if you are calling R3, the corresponding value of the R3 properties will be invoked. If you are using R2, it takes the value of R2. If you want R1, you can use R1 also. So now next thing is what I am going to do is I am going to create one more object to implement the concept of copy constructor. For example, R4, I am interested to copy the value of R1 object. So even if you want, you can use R1 default constructor. We can initialize the same value. Otherwise, if you want to copy that one object property to another object, we can use copy constructor also. So that here I'm interested to call the value, send the value of R1. So in this case, there is no method will be invoked. Just check that there is an error will be shown while you are compile the program because I didn't implement the concept of copy constructors. See that there is no suitable constructor found for rectangle. So you see that it's for easy understanding. We can see that it is a rectangle. The argument is a rectangle because we are passing an object as an argument. So whenever you are passing an object as an argument, the data type, we know that we need to define the data type along with the object name. So that we here the rectangle is means whenever the object is passed as an argument, so we need to say the data type as a class name as a data type. So I'm going to copy this code and once again I'm going to implement here. So it is a class name, and for the argument it has only one object. So I am saying object name is R. So for data type is very important, so that I have to define the name of the class. Clear? So whenever the object is passed as an argument, we need to define the class name as a data type. So now we need to define a length and breadth property. So here we need to copy from that object R1. So here it is like as a formal parameter. So here actual parameter is R1. This R1 is while you are calling a function, so while coming to the function declaration concept, so it will be taken as a formal parameter. So by using this a formal parameter, we can able to access it. But if this is an object, so that if you want to access a property, we know that by using the object name dot, the name of that property we are going to access. So R dot length and then R dot breadth. So like that we need to access. So this is a copy constructor. So I'm going to define it as a copy constructor. So if you want it, we can calculate R4 dot area underscore currency. Now we can compile and run the code. Let's say compile. I'm going to run now. Sorry, I didn't say two times a constructor. So from this, we can understand then the first one is we are invoking default constructor. We already had a discussion about this too. And parameterized constructor also invoke. And after that, I use the copy constructor to copy the property of your objects. I mean that copy the property of R1 object into R4 by using the R4 and calculate the area for rectangle. So from that, what we understood that with the help of copy constructor, we are going to copy the property of one object into another object. The main important thing is whenever you are going to pass the object as an argument, the data type of the object must be in a class name must be in a data type. So this is the way we are trying to implement the concept of constructors in our programming, so that once again I recall. So constructor is a special member function which is used to initialize the value of the data instance variable of a class. Means normally at the time of declaring instance variable, it is not a base type to assign the value for the data members, so that we can use the constructors. We are going to initialize the value for the data member, so that so in this constructor, the constructor, the class name and the function name must be same, and does not have any return type. If you want, we can define a proper access modifier for the constructors. Then the next thing is it will it means for accessing, for calling a constructor method, it will be invoked automatically at the time of object creations. So here so there are three possible type of constructors. One is a default constructor, second one parameterized, and third one copy constructor. For a default constructor, if you want to assign a common value for all the properties of object, for any object belongs to the class, we can go with the default constructor. And the second one is for a parameterized constructor. For parameterized constructor, if you want to assign the same value, different value for the properties of different object, we can go with the default parameterized constructor. And for copy constructor, if you want to copy the object from one object into another, you can go with the copy constructor. This here I need to differentiate the default constructor from the parameterized constructor. For example, one simple example. So while you are going to create a new account in a bank, the minimum balance amount is a 10,000. Further, this is a minimum balance, so that we need to pay the 10,000 rupees, even the minimum of creating an account. So I'm going to just give another extra sum amount with parameterized constructor. So normally whenever you are going to creation of instance variable, please try to use the concept of constructors to initialize the value for the